Hi, I am René Meijer, a psychologist from the Netherlands, and I am embarrassed and ashamed about these people from my country upsetting the world with blaming Islam. And I'm equally, I must also say, equally disturbed about threats from the side of some factions of Islam against us, and thus also against me. So I want to take responsibility and answer to this problem. Let me tell you something about the conflict between these two religions from a scientific, behavioral point of view. Religions are about God, and both Islam and Christianity say there is one God. So let's agree with them on that point. If there's one God and these religions are in conflict, then there is evidently a conflict of authority in speaking about this one God. With the two fighting, evidently that authority is missing, which says, I am the one God and you now all shut up and listen. So this God must speak up somehow to solve the conflict. So how do we do this? God speaks through his representatives, isn't it? So let me, as a behavioral scientist, now represent this one God for you in quoting from his leaders, myself, and tell these two fighting parties something about behaving in peace. So consider me, for the time being, a Muslim as well as a Christian, and we'll see. I say, where two are fighting, two are guilty, because living for the one God there is peace with obedience. Yes, that is the belief. Okay, let's keep that in mind. The two are evidently not in peace with all the threats and the actual war fronts they make in Iraq and Afghanistan. So Christians want to conquer the world with democracy, and Islam wants to achieve that by the jihad. That is their belief. Spread the message, and he who opposes it is the sinner, or the enemy, or a possible terrorist, or else an oppressor. That is clear. But why are those two missions in conflict? They can coexist and cooperate in their missions, isn't it? So it's not that I believe that any religion or political party will ever win and rule the rest of for the rest of eternity, but okay, why not cooperate? Or are they maybe, with that mission statement of their belief, in reality disobedient to their own original leaders and scriptures? God wouldn't fight God with his own missions, would he? So the two religions must be doing something wrong. Both must be disobedient to the one God that brings peace to the world by obedience, isn't it? That being so, we can say the pot is blaming the kettle. The two are accusing each other of their own disobedience. So now that is clear. So what is the error of disobedience they have in common? Or what is what science calls the constant error? Psychology says that if you cannot find your own error, you blame someone else for it. That is called projection. We can see that happening all the time, blaming your dog and your wife with our own ignorance. And we don't want to see this escalate, because people who are the victim of that will not accept it. And certainly we don't want to see this internationally, which happens to be the case, maybe, with what we have now. between Holland and some politicians from Holland and the rest of the world in Islamic terms. So let's agree about this and therefore discuss this. That this is the problem. We cannot find our own error. Next to that, furthermore, says behavioral science that we are conditioned beings, and that when we have a conflict of authority, that this, with respect to the notion of our conditioning, refers to the very authority of this conditioning. Conditioning happens being systematically with time. So what matters then is the question, who rules the time? Who is the boss? Who sets the agenda? Who fills the calendar? Most political meetings, for instance, deal with this problem. Where to meet, when to meet, and where to meet. When to do it again, isn't it? But is the time system of ours the obedience to our one God in this case? Well, I don't think so. Apparently, both Islam and Christianity are missing the point of oneness here. Apparently, we suffer from some type of original sin. And that sounds familiar, isn't it? So, we can safely say that the authority of the time system is in conflict with these religions. That's a sure thing. So, let's take the argument one step further. The two religions, not aware of the constant error of a failing time system, are projecting. They blame each other. True awareness of guilt would render this impossible. Thus is, following this argument, the unconscious state of both the religions proven. Religiously being conscious, there wouldn't be such a lack of penance, with both sides blaming the other. Would behavioral science then make a better mind with this maybe? Well, we can give it a try. Constant error in science means that whatever you try, you always get wrong results because of an underlying mistake, an underlying error has not been detected. Christianity finding fault with Islam and Islam finding fault with Christianity is such a case. Whatever they try, the conflict continues. The common error is not found, and we now know that they are, from this reasoning, we now know that they are projecting their own ignorance in disobedience to their one God. So, that seems to be the case, okay? Then, let's go to the next point. On what issue is each of the parties disobedient? Should they all be vegetarians? Maybe. Okay. Should they all be celibates? Well, that's very possible. Very well possible. Should they give up on doing it for the money? Could also be true, but it is not to psychology to state that. The question for behavioral science is, in what way would the time system of their conditionings fail to make peace as it should with the one God they have? So let's take a look at what the leaders have to say. In science, I may represent a point of view, like a religious view, if I correctly refer and not claim the control for it myself. So Jesus said, do it on earth as in heaven, and that he said in the Lord's Prayer. And that's point one. Christianity doesn't really do this, setting the clock and the calendar to the money, and not to nature. Christians definitely do it with standard time, not completely on earth as it is in heaven. That's a clear thing. The dates and months are leaped, but not the days and the weeks. There we have the disobedience we talked about, and it concerns the conditioning time system. And now Islam. Muhammad said, do the pure sun and the pure moon, pure nature. That's the will of God, will of Allah, prayer times. Point 2 is, though, with Islam, that even though the Muslim respects the sun with his prayer times and the moon with the fasting for a month, outside of that, outside the mosque with the crescent moon on top, so to say, they defy the Prophet submitting themselves to standard time. Standard time settlements the same way as Christians do that. So they just as well submit for their daily activities to this reductionist and materialistic concept of commercial time management, which by the politicians is called a pragmatic necessity. What they really say then is warfare and its madness of collective self-destruction is pragmatic. It comes handy. It might make a buck. And listen carefully, both the parties are saying this. Wow. So that's interesting, isn't it? So they have the same clock and the same calendar. They have mean time and zone time, and together with the Gregorian calendar with its linear weeks, they both defy the commands of their lordships, of Muhammad and Jesus. This they have in common, that is sure. The week is not leaped. The day is not leaped. It is not the pure natural time of Allah. It is not to the words of the Prophet, isn't it? So, nor is it to the heavenly pattern of the Father as Jesus advises to pray. So we cannot say that we are one or obedient. We are in conflict, being disobedient with our own spiritual masters or leaders or lordships or prophets. The moon is forgotten, and the sun scorches the planet dry with commercial energy philosophies which need to be overhauled by sustainable energy technologies. So I was discussing this in other videos. I will not go into this now. But Christianity, as for time, by means of Pope Gregory, abandoned the respect for the lunar order. The so-called Ides and Calends, as it in the old days was called, full moon, new moon, for the monasterial rule at the end of the Middle Ages was abandoned. The Pope himself abandoned that. It was abandoned earlier by the Roman Emperor in 325, I believe, and that was the collapse of the Roman Empire, and Christianity rose then. But in the monasteries, the original lunar order was projected on the solar calendar. The Julian calendar is still maintained, but that was abolished by the Pope. So he also did his share of denying the natural order of time. And so you can blame everyone in this, but is that the right course? You can also speak about Islam. Islam has the crescent moon as its symbol, but they prefer nevertheless the linear weeks for civil purposes, material purposes by which they defy the natural order of the moon. Iraq is a time zone island. It's not to the sundial. The time zone was introduced in America. They follow against the natural order of the sundial, and at the present time they fight America, blaming them for the original sin they commit themselves. So it's not really conscious. It's a tragedy of the unconscious in psychoanalytic terms. So we do not call this a mature understanding. It is not emancipated. It is not self-responsible to what actually is the lead in our lives according the Prophet and according Jesus. Fix yourselves on the natural order and everything will be okay. But we don't do this. So, in conclusion, both religions, we can say, defy the order, the natural order of time, of the sun and the moon. So, right? Both do it the same way, isn't it? Christianity and Islam have standard time in common. So, they have in common that which is in defiance of their own original leaders. Standard Time is the devil, to speak in their own words. Not the religiousness itself, but the projection and the unconscious state of ignorance of the people involved is what the real problem is. The cultures blame each other for being godless and barbaric. So, does that ring a bell with you personally? The common cultural defiance of the natural order of time is the error in common. It is a constant error in terms of behavioral science. And whatever the religions do without refuting Standard Time is futile, right? Let behavioral science take care of overhauling these societal institutions, that are so powerful and so dangerous. And now, you as a listener, personally take some real time, some natural time, and do so being regular with the sun and the moon. And then think about what you can do about this international conflict yourself. Better the world and begin with yourselves. Okay? Is that right with us? I thank you for your attention.